So let's talk to our mate.
Oh, our mate.
He's the man.
Yep.
His name is Harold H. P. Cock-a-doodle-doo. And he's going to tell us, obviously, the excitement in Ipswich in 1865 when a murder was committed in Toowoomba.
Yeah.
Explain that to us, would you please there, Harold?
I certainly will, Danny, and it was very exciting. Not quite as exciting as you being in the fire shed today, but it's right up there. Because there's a murder that happened in Toowoomba in June 1865, and it remains unsolved today, despite heaps of people being charged.
Sorry.
Now, I've been researching this for a few weeks and have already posted part one of the story on it. Now, the victim was Mrs. Margaret Curtis. Now, she was a 28-year-old mother of two who was strangled on Ruthven Street. But what's interesting is the excitement it created here in Ipswich.
Wow.
Now, there were no witnesses, and yet vague descriptions of a man harassing women that night were circulated as being that of the murderer. The government offered a reward of £100 for the apprehension of the murderer. The result was excitement in Ipswich like you would not believe.
Right.
Now, the next morning, immediately after the murder, Toowoomba's Sub-Inspector of Police, Jeremiah Foran, he formed a posse with several townsmen headed straight here to Ipswich. That's because they believed a suspicious man was heading to Ipswich after leaving Toowoomba the night before.
Wow.
And Ipswich and Inspector Foran from County Kerry Island, he wasn't one to joke around, because a few years later, he'd actually take his daughter-in-law to court over his late son's property. But anyway, in Ipswich, not one but two persons were arrested on the same day by Ipswich's Constable John Elliott. Now, Elliott was under the command of Sub-Inspector Edward Quinn. Oh. And, of course, Quinn had previously unsuccessfully prosecuted Ipswich's possible first serial killer that I told you about the other week. Now, Quinn would dismiss Elliott from the police force a number of times over misconduct. And keep taking him back. And poor old Constable Elliott, he would later lose both his eyes when caught in an explosion at Denmark Hill.
Oh.
Anyway, on this occasion, both of Constable Elliott's suspects were taken to the Ipswich lockup and charged with the murder in the Ipswich courthouse. But, of course, both were dismissed. Now, one was arrested in the morning on Brisbane Street. He was William Barber, but he had only just arrived in Ipswich from Brisbane and knew nothing about the murder at all. The other was arrested in the afternoon at 7 Mile Creek near Rosewood. Now, he was James Munro, who had just been released from Toowoomba Jail and pretended to be insane. Now, he was apprehended in the White Lion Inn at 7 Mile Creek after being detained there by two Ipswich publicans who were very keen for the reward. They were Frederick Moore and Michael O'Brien, who were a former convict and the son of a former convict, respectively. Now, Moore was the licensee of the White Lion where the arrest was made. And Constable Elliott would later return to the White Lion to arrest Moore for stealing a cow. But, Danny, that's a different story. Now, meanwhile, Brisbane's Police Sergeant Dennis McCarthy responded with another Ipswich publican, John Devine. He reported that he saw the murderer come into his Bouvau hotel.
Right.
Now, Sergeant McCarthy then tracked for 100 miles a man called Daniel Edwards, who was told matched the description. Now, when Edwards was brought before the Ipswich Police Court, it was pointed out that the prisoner was over 6 feet tall, which is really tall back then.
It was.
But the description of the murderer was just 5'5". Oh. So yet another Ipswich accused was released. In any case, at least 6 different people were charged with the murder. It was just crazy. The excitement in Ipswich over the £100 reward, that continued on for years. But the murder was never solved.
Never solved?
Yeah, it's still an open case today, Danny. Oh. And there's a lot more to the story that I'm researching, and I'll be posting more on my website. So you're going to have to keep watching.
I can't believe that. Oh, how long? 1865?
1865, yep.
And she was choked in the main street of Ruthven Street?
Yep, up in Toowoomba, and it just seems all the attention was down in Ipswich to find the perpetrator, and they never did.
That's the typical attitude of those Toowoombahites. That's what they're like.
Yep. Blame Ipswich. Blame Ipswich.
WWWMBA, Queen of the City of the Not So Gay. The sing of Intrapilli, they got it on the brain. You hear them yabber about Wollongabba. They're going quiet and saying, "Oh, gee, you know that? And we're going."
Yeah, well, that's good. That'll be a single next week, I'm sure. That's on your promo for the show.
Well, mate, that was a great story, and people can read about it and read about all the other things you talk about Ipswich history. How do we get to read it?
Yeah, you go online to historyouthere.com.
And I know your sister Sophie is listening.
Well, yes, I'm sure Sophie is, and so is Sophia.
Sophia.
Yes, she'll be listening as well.
I was trying to think the proper way, and I stuffed it up again. Sorry, Soph. She hates that.
Go short. You can't get that one wrong. Take the short off.
Have a great day. HistoryOutThere.com. Thanks a lot, Harold. Really appreciate your time, and hear all about this time each week right here on West Bremer Radio. The time now is 8:20.